Hey, so today I'm going to be looking at Dracula by Bram Stoker. I was originally going to do this video earlier, but then I watched Nosferatu the Vampire and had to talk about that for a little while. But anyway, here we are now. Dracula was released in 1897 by author Bram Stoker, and it might just be the most important book that I'll ever talk about on this channel. This book really put a spin on horror in literature and is what made vampires so famous today. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone who doesn't know who Dracula is. Sure, vampires existed before this book, but Dracula put a massive spin on the creatures for a number of reasons. For its relentless creepiness, the bizarre way it explores sexuality, and even being an encyclopedia on vampires, and giving lots of information on how they work, what their strengths and weaknesses are, along with the long and grueling process of a human turning into an undead vampire. It also makes a big stand on religious faith and the whole good versus evil, God versus Satan sort of thing. There is seriously so much I can talk about with this book that I will hardly be scratching the surface. So anyway, let's just get into the book's length. So my copy of Dracula is 440 pages long. Now, this copy seems like it's a teeny weeny little book, but it has really thin paper, so yeah, it looks small, but it's actually quite a lot longer than it looks. I won't lie that this might be just the tiniest bit long for me in this kind of style. Sure, the book is supposed to be a slow burner, but I just think it's a bit too much of a slow burner in some parts. There are some sections where you just want to be able to get through it so you can continue on to the interesting stuff, you know? I'd say if I were to split this book into 6 parts, I'd say the first 6 is great, second 6 is great, third 6 is good, fourth 6 is a bit too slow for me, 5, 6 is good, and the last 6 of the book is, again, great. I probably felt that this book was a bit slower too because it is from 1897, and that's a very long time ago, and the English has changed a lot since then. And there were unfortunately some times when I did have to look up online what some words meant and stuff like that, just because of the way it's written. But at the same time, I do want to give this book credit because I think most people would think that this book still holds up today. You can still read this and get a bunch of enjoyment out of it, and I agree with that. I'd say 85 to 90% of this book is just fantastic to read. I think it's written really well. It's just those small parts where things get a bit, oh, that's weird. Please keep that in mind, don't be discouraged by its age. Dracula follows a solicitor named Jonathan Harker who is travelling to Transylvania, which is in Romania, to sell a house to Count Dracula in England. Dracula lives in a large castle, and the Transylvanian locals warn Jonathan of going to the castle because they believe that Dracula is a vampire. But Jonathan goes anyway and makes a discovery that Dracula is, spoiler alert, a vampire. I think we all know that. Like, if you said the word vampire, just the word Dracula comes into your head at the same time. That's not really a spoiler. I mean, like, literally, you can ask anyone over the age of 5 if they know who Dracula is, and they'll probably most likely say that he's a vamp. Then, after that discovery, a number of horrific incidents begin to unfold in England. This isn't a very straightforward plot because it's set over a lot of places with lots of different characters. I think the first 2 6 of this book have to be my favourite part, with Jonathan Harker going to Dracula's castle. It's so creepy and eerie, and it's so well written, so creepy, it's just fantastic. And that is actually what led to another problem with this book for me, is that the first third of the book is so good and so creepy and so intense that the rest of the book actually didn't hold up to that creepiness for the whole thing. It definitely regained it towards the end, but I'd say the middle section definitely didn't have that same creepiness as the beginning did. And sure, there were many scary parts throughout the rest of this book, but they didn't come quite as frequently as they did with the castle. The characterization in this book is told quite well too. You do actually care for the characters quite a lot, and when something happens to it, it makes it a lot more impactful because you're invested in them. Dracula in particular is a fantastic villain that I don't think gets portrayed overly accurately in most of the movies that I've seen, comparing it to the book. I mean, he gets portrayed well. Klaus Kinski, Bela Lugosi, Gary Oldman. They're really good portrayals. It's just none of them are like the book. Which, you know, that's fine. You can be different. It's just that I would like to see book Dracula sometime. From what I've seen, most movies try to make him cool and kind of suave. And while he's certainly portrayed to be cool and suave in the book, he doesn't have that same scariness to him. You know what I mean? This book also has you invested in the characters because it's all told from the first person, from the diary entries of all the characters. There's about 5 or 6 characters' perspectives that we read from, and it really helps us get to know them and who they are, because the writing style, it does change between the characters, and it's really, really well written. I'm going to give this book an 86% rating. Now, the score comes from all the things I've talked about so far, such as originality, legacy, character scares, and even being somewhat of an encyclopedia on the vampire lore. And I think most people would give Dracula a higher score for me, a higher score than me, pardon me, especially because of the legacy, but it does lose a little bit of points for its different quality throughout the book. It isn't consistent enough for me in some parts, and the boring parts can get a bit boring sometimes, which is a shame because the book started off with so much promise. And I'm not saying that it didn't fulfill expectations by the end of it. I was in love with it by the end. But I'm just saying that some segments of the book really do drop in quality compared to the rest. It's a bit like The Shining. Like, it's a fantastic book, but it really does have some sections where you're just like... Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the review on Dracula by Bram Stoker. I don't exactly know what I'm going to be doing next, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. See you later.